Well, welcome to the McKinsey auditorium. A little different from when I was in school here. The old hard seats that were all flat, and we didn't have any air, but we did have Gilly. I have a little bit of business to do to start with. Some of you want 50-50 tickets today. This is the first year that we've done the 50-50, and also the first year we've had the donation jar out. Money was a little tight this year. Everything went up. As you can imagine, all of our vendors increased their prices, except Lynn. Lynn Smith stayed the same for us. She's done a wonderful job for us the last couple of years. I'm looking out there over the audience for an honest person. Good luck. Get your 50-50 tickets out. Geez, I don't know.
Get Bruce firm.
Bruce? I'll have to send a pigeon out to get his attention. Somebody said George Hobbs, but that's out. Let's have Judy. Come on over here. No, but you'd share the proceeds with me. So if you have your 50-50 tickets out, we'll draw one. You're going to get $60 if it's your number.
This is a good one.
Okay.
I bought
No.
tickets, but I didn't even bring them in, so.
Well, if this is your number, you get the money if you can score a basket from half court. The number is 960605. Somebody got it? Yeah. Okay, I'll bring it up. You don't have to give that. Now, I already introduced our committee in at the brunch, but a lot of you people weren't there for that, so I just will quickly introduce them again. And committee people, if you just stand and raise your hands. Louise Fisk. Where's Louise?
Right here.
Minnie McKinsey. Jesse Page. Judy Fernald. Eddie Dempsey. And George Stanley. Just a quick background on how this works for those of you that weren't down there. The people that are being inducted today were nominated by somebody other than committee members. We cannot nominate people ourselves. We take nominations from the community, from anybody that's interested in nominating somebody that is from the community. There's a wide variety of categories. When we started this, we wanted to make sure we were getting people, not just athletes, but people that were good in music, people that were successful in their life, or scientists, or engineers, or college professors, or welders, whatever. And we've basically hit them all. But we need people in the community to nominate individuals. There were nomination forms outside here. Most of those went early, but Principal Justin Page ran off a bunch more. So if you want to pick any up on your way out, go ahead. If you have any problem with that, my number is on the form. Give me a call. I'll help you through it. If you need help either researching or need some ideas as to how to put together the nomination form, please just give me a holler. I'll be more than glad to help. Okay? And you turn those back in, you can get them back into me, you can turn them in at the office at school. And if you're looking for forms, they almost always some down at the credit union, the library has some, they always have some up at school. And again, I can get you forms. Now, you all should have had access to a booklet that has our inductees from this year and has lists of the ones that have gone in before. I would like you to take a look at the back page. We always like to have a couple of questions, trivia questions, to see who knows their Schenck history. And I'd like you to start with that first one. What year did the first class graduate from Schenck High School? 57. 55, I hear. 58, I hear. 1958.
59.
Now, there is some distinction between Schenck High School and Garrett Schenck Junior High School. So you might want to keep that in mind a little bit. Where was the first Schenck High School?
The Schenck.
Do you know?
Where was it?
Yes.
The Opal Myrick? No, it was behind that. Behind the Opal Myrick.
You're wrong.
No.
Okay, she said behind Opal Myrick. What was behind Opal Myrick was basically an elementary school, and they had so few high school students that they had either one or two rooms designated for the high school kids. And that was simply called East Millinocket High School. Durwood Heel, one of the members of our Hall of Fame, graduated from that in the early 20s. Okay? That very quickly became obsolete because the town grew so fast with the mill. And the Opal Myrick School, what we grew up, my age, grew up as Opal Myrick School, was originally the Garrett Schenck Junior High School. And it eventually became a grade school. And that school had its first graduation in 1927. Okay, 1927. And which one of our inductees had a relative in that graduating class? Larry, do you know?
Sure. Steve Grove's brother, Lawrence.
No.
Yeah.
Stephen W. Groves had a brother, Larry. Lawrence was his official name, but Larry is what they called him. Was in that graduating class. As also was Larry Jowdery's father, Schenck Jowdery. That's how he knows so much. By the way, in 1927, they did a senior play called The Little Clodhopper. And Schenck Jowdery was the man. Okay, he was O.C. Gump. Okay, which tells you a little bit about the character. But Larry shared that with me in the, what was the name of the paper? The Pine Cone. They published it was their try at a yearbook.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of interesting stuff, but it wasn't quite the extent of what's today. So Larry Groves is the answer to the second one. We're going to come back to Phil when we do him in a minute. But the next one is going to be the first one that we induct in a second. Brian Estes. It says, did he play basketball, Schenck, and how tall was he? Any of you know?
6'6".
6'3", that's a good number.
And he was a man.
6'6".
Who said that?
Very tall.
That sounds like Daryl Dupre up there. He's good at that trivia stuff. Brian Estes was 6 feet 6 inches tall. Okay? And he didn't play basketball. But he was the manager. I have a quick story about that. Terry Ordway. And so you can believe the story or not if you know Terry. Back in the day, and I was starting to go to games back then and watch Terry play. Lincoln was a big rival, as it is today. And Lincoln always had these guys that were giants. Okay, and back in that day, they had a guy named Bob Tina, who was 6'10". And I can remember going to the game and watching him in warm-up stand under the basket reach up on his toes and take hold of the net and just hold it. Instead of rebounding, he'd flip the balls back out through. Okay? Well, Dick Groves was the coach of the Schenck team at the time, and he thought maybe he could get a little bit of an edge. So he went and found another uniform, and he dressed Brian Estes up in it. And when they came out of the locker room, here comes 6'6" out of the locker room. I don't know if it worked or not, but it was a good effort. Okay. Now, with that, we'll move on to the program. Rear Admiral Brian Estes is the first one that we're going to induct. And Brian's story is an interesting one. When he was a year old, his dad died. The family was living out in upstate New York, and Mom brought the family to East Millinocket. And I'm not sure, I've got to talk to Julie about this. See, I know there was the father had a brother who lived in Medwood, Orville Estes. And I don't know if that was it. I'll talk to you later. We'll get this straightened out. But his mom, with a child a year old, and there's no safety net back then. And the mill didn't hire women. And there wasn't a whole lot else. I mean, you scrambled for any kind of money that you got. And she was able to pay the rent by working in people's homes, helping with the elderly, and things like that for years. And Brian, from the time he could work, took any job he could get. And I have one quick story about him when he was 14 years old. Those of you that are old out there, much older than 73, maybe you remember Nelson's Hardware on Main Street? They remember Nelson's Hardware. Okay, well, Brian got a job with Nelson's Hardware when he was 14. And that job, part of that job, entailed driving a flatbed truck from the streets of East Millinocket to Thomaston, Maine, to pick up loads of cement to bring back to the hardware store. Remember, he's 14 years old, no driver's license. Okay, one of his college fraternity brothers, Brian's college fraternity brothers, heard that story, and he said, "Yeah," he said, I think that must have been a small town up there with, must have had an Andy Taylor type sheriff." But that is a true story, isn't it? Okay. So throughout his childhood, Brian worked all the way through, but he never didn't do his schoolwork. He was very active in high school. He was a member of the drama club. He was on the honor roll all the way through. He was big in junior achievement. That was one of both he and his mother's and his wife's activities. He ended up the first honor essayist of the class of 1959, and then he went on to the University of Maine, where he majored in civil engineering. In his senior year, this was quite a second half of his senior year, Brian enlisted in the U.S. Naval Reserve. He graduated with a BS in civil engineering. He married his sweetheart, Roberta Montgomery, who, by the way, is a relative of John Montgomery, sitting up in the crowd. And he reported for duty like a month later, all in the span of a couple months. In November of that year, he was commissioned an ensign, and he began his work. He had a decorated 30-year career as a naval civil engineer. Corps. I think we have somebody else, maybe not. Yep, just grab a seat anywhere. Or... There's. Yep.
Thank you.
So he's now in the Navy. One of his first assignments, not his first, but one of his first was Vietnam. And they gave him the job of being in charge of developing a quarry and a rock crushing plant north of Da Nang. Okay, those of you that are familiar with Vietnam, Da Nang was a big air base that we had, and north of Vietnam was the jungles and mountains. And the whole time, that Brian was in charge of this operation every day that they went out. They had sniper fire and mortar fire. And he lost, I believe it was six of the CBs that worked with him were killed in that one job that he had. He survived it, and he came back to the States. From that point, he was deployed all over, not only the United States, but all over the world. And it was sort of a whirlwind for he and Roberta and Julie. One of his stops back in the States, he was able to pick up his master's degree at the University of Illinois in engineering. And he continued to climb through the ranks in the Navy. In 1988, he began work on a project of huge importance. He was now a captain, and he was put in charge of construction for the home base of the Trident missile submarines at Kings Bay, Georgia. Now, this was the biggest, most expensive peacetime construction that ever took place in the Navy. And our boy from Schenck, she's gonna hit me, from Schenck High School was in charge. Hard to believe, and very, very nice. Brian was later promoted to Rear Admiral and served as the commander of the Pacific Division, Naval Facilities Engineering Command, 3rd Navy Construction Brigade, Pearl Harbor. He was in charge basically of all the Navy facilities from Hawaii to California, that whole Pacific Rim. Brian was the guy in charge of all the naval facilities. Okay, anything they needed done was him that they called. Under his command, he had 700 engineers, 8,000 CBs, and 4,000 other employees. He served for 30 years in the Navy and then retired. After retirement, he didn't stop. He was a very important part of many of our national committees for the Department of Energy and the National Nuclear Regulatory Commission. His expertise was one that was in great demand in many of these big committees in Washington. And he stayed with that right up until the point where he finally retired. And I'll sum this up. Admiral Samuel Cox, Director of Naval History, wrote of Admiral Brian Estes in his notification of Brian's death. Brian showed the can-do spirit through all his assignments. He was an expert in procuring, engineering, building, and maintaining facilities for the U.S. Navy. He was an expert, I got that. He was a key leader in the civil engineering corps community, and he never failed to serve with dedication and distinction. Wherever the Navy needed him, Brian will be greatly missed, but his legacy lives on in the civil engineering corps community and the Navy today. His daughter Julie is here today to receive his plaque, and I think she'd like to say a few words or have us read something. Nothing?
Just 2 words.
Okay. Would you come up, Julie?
My mother really wanted to be here today to say thank you all, but we agreed that we really wanted to point out that it was this town and you people and your relatives that gave him a place to stand. And we'll always be grateful for that. Thank you.
Ensign Stephen W. Groves, United States Navy. Stephen Groves was born on January 29, 1917 to Lemuel and Evelyn Groves. His father was the paymaster for the Great Northern Paper Company. Stephen grew up in East Millinocket with brothers Jack, Lawrence, and Richard. He played basketball and baseball in high school and attained the rank of Eagle Scout. After graduating from Schenck in 1934, he went on to attend the University of Maine, where he was an honor student and earned a BS in mechanical engineering. In December of 1940, Stephen enlisted in the Navy and completed a very demanding naval aviator training program. He was commissioned as an ensign in August of 1941 and was assigned to duty on the carrier USS Hornet. This was just before December 7th, a day that will live in infamy. The Japanese secretly attacked Pearl Harbor, inflicting serious damage to the U.S. naval fleet and causing America to enter World War II. 5 months later, in direct response to that attack on Pearl Harbor, Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle and his group of what they call the bombers led a surprise attack on mainland Japan. His planes flew off the deck of the USS Hornet, and while Ensign Groves was not directly involved in that action, he was on the ship, and he would later become very involved. Just a quick note on that. The Doolittle Raiders, it was basically a suicide mission. The Japanese had slapped us pretty bad at Pearl Harbor. And we wanted to show them that they couldn't get away with that without something happening to them. But it was difficult to get any kind of planes or troops into Japan. So we had to fly the bombers in from offshore. The bombers were too heavy to carry enough fuel to do their mission and get back to the planes. So they knew when they left. Judy's always taking care of it. They knew when they left that they weren't going to be getting back on the ship. They were either going to ditch into the ocean, partway out, and maybe get rescued, or they're going to ditch in enemy territory, or they're going to get shot down. So it was basically a suicide run. Colonel Doolittle actually made it. They dropped their bombs on mainland Japan, and many of them got shot down, many of them landed in enemy territory, many of them were captured and simply killed, tortured. Doolittle himself with some of his crew landed in Chinese territory, and the Chinese actually hid them and helped them escape. And it ticked the Japanese off so bad that they literally shot 100,000 Chinese civilians because of what they had done with Captain Doolittle. So it's sort of a pretty amazing story. Now back to our story with Stephen W. The Japanese had us on the ropes. They knew they had inflicted serious damage on our ships in the Pacific at Pearl Harbor, and they wanted to put us down. And they knew if they could have another successful attack, they would do so much damage to the fleet that they would control the Pacific. If they control the Pacific, you're talking about from Alaska down the whole length of California and all of the Pacific coast, and heading inland. We were going to be in trouble. So this was vital. What ended up happening, the American intelligence unit was better than the Japanese one. And they actually intercepted some of the messages that the Japanese were sending with their plans on this attack. They were encrypted and we had to decode them. But we figured out what they were going to do. And their first attack was going to be at Midway Island. Midway Island was midway in the Pacific. It was a place where they planned to take over the U.S. base and use it as a staging area for themselves, so they could then lash out from there to attack the Americans. So it was a vital spot. Well, we intercepted that information, and we said, oh, go ahead. We'll let you attack Midway, but we'll hide over to the east and wait until after the attack and you've dropped your bombs and have to go reload, and then we'll bring out our troops and we'll bomb the heck out of you. And that's basically how it's set up. The three ships in the naval fleet that day, the Enterprise, the Yorktown, and the Hornet, were laying in wait. And as soon as they had a chance, they surprised the Japanese and attacked them. Stephen Groves, and in his group, there were 6 in his group of pilots that flew off the Hornet. They were supposed to try to protect the Enterprise. And there were 6 of them, and there were 20-something Japanese planes that they were trying to fend off. They shot down 14 of those enemy planes and wounded or damaged another 6, so they had to head back. So the Japanese had to call off their attack on that part of it. So we ended up in that 4-day battle on top. We won the Battle of Midway, and it changed the direction of the war in the Pacific. It gave us the edge, which we never relinquished afterwards. So Stephen W. was a big part of that. He took off 9 times that day. He only came back 8. He was shot down. She gives me hell when I do this. He was shot down on the 9th and declared dead the following day. And the Navy awarded him their highest honor, the Navy Cross. And they also commissioned a battleship to be named the USS Groves in 1944. The war ended in 45, so the ship never got built. So they canceled it. And it wasn't until, I think 27 years later, 1944, the Navy ended up commissioning another ship. It was a guided missile frigate that they built at Bath Iron Works. And there were a number of people from East Millinocket here that went down for that commissioning. And I think May, did you break the bottle? May was the person that broke the bottle on the bow for that commissioning. And the last statement on this, the Navy had not forgotten their courageous young pilot, and neither had the community. This is one that we want to make sure that everybody understands. Stephen W. Groves was not the only boy from here that died in World War II. And he was the first. He was the first guy from the area that passed away. And we definitely want to honor him today, but we don't want to forget those others as well. So Miriam has agreed to accept the plaque. Would you please come up?
Very short. I hope you can hear me. Okay, I'd like to thank Frank and the committee and Larry Chowdhury for his nomination of Stephen. And it's with great honor that I accept this award in recognition for the Groves family. June of 1942 was a time of worry and great concern for our community, for our small community and the world. Many of its young men had gone off to serve their country after the United States entered the war after Pearl Harbor. In early June of that year, many of the young boys, they were teens, young teens from town, would gather down at the river at Hathaway's. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. And they would go swimming at this place that my Uncle Dick referred to as Sandy Island. Dick Groves was among the boys, and there were boys from East Millinocket and Medway. Well, a sudden thunderstorm struck, and it struck the tree that was on the Sandy Island and electrocuted 5 of the boys from East Millinocket and Medway. One of those who was killed happened to be Charles Watson, young Charles Watson. His father was the minister at the First Congregational Church. And the Watkins lived right next door to the Groves family on Pine Street. The Groves family at the time lived in Lorna's house, Lorna Shiraki. and the parsonage was right next door. And word came that Charles had been one of the ones that was electrocuted down at the river. So all of the friends and neighbors of the Watkins family gathered there to comfort the family. And it wasn't but a week later that news came that Stephen had been shot down and killed. And so again, the friends and family of the Groves family gathered at Pine Street to help them through their difficult time. I asked Dick one time, I said, what was it like to receive one of those awful telegrams? And he said that the day that it happened, he was upstairs, he was 15, Dick was. He was upstairs reading the funny papers, eating a donut. And his father was shaving in the bathroom, and his mother was downstairs puttering around in the kitchen. Well, Granny was deaf. She was deaf at 40. So she didn't hear the knock on the door. So my grandfather went down and received the dreaded telegram and broke the news to my grandmother. And she became a Gold Star mother, like many of the others. Stephen, like Frank said, was the first casualty from East Millinocket, but he was not the only one. And I would like to name all of those. Gerald Kuhn, Gilbert Fisk, Roderick McLean, Clarence Michaud, Allie Pelkey, Eugene Powers, Edwin Runnels, Francis Sullivan, Ernest Surratt, and Ralph Twist. Maybe some of you are descendants from those families. I'm not sure. It was 81 years ago. It was a long time ago. But they all made the supreme sacrifice for their country. And before I wrap this up, I won't go on too long. My grandfather had written this little book, okay, back in '49. And he dedicated it to Stephen and all of the men that followed Stephen that didn't make it back home. And I'm just going to read you just the last stanza of a poem that he included in this little book. It was entitled, "The Legion Eternal." A message floats upon the breeze like golden bell note over the wave. Uphold the light we leave to thee. Guard thou the flag we died to save. Amen.
Thank you, Miriam. That was great. Our third person to be inducted today is Eddie Ham. Eddie has lived a life of exemplary service to both Schenck High School and the Katahdin area. In 1976, he and his wife Gail purchased the Hamlet Motel and Restaurant, becoming the fourth generation to run the family business and exemplifying the family motto, "You're a stranger here but once." And they lived that motto. When he ran the Hamlet, Ed welcomed travelers stranded by severe snowstorms. He used to ask them if they wanted to stay, no charge, at the hotel while the weather was bad. And he and Gail used to actually go buy Christmas presents for him if it was Christmas time. For many years, the Hamlet also sponsored adult men's softball and basketball traveling teams. There are a number of you in here that I'm sure will remember the softball teams, the Hamlet jackets that everybody in town would wear that was on the team, or the basketball teams that traveled all over the state. He also organized trips to Fenway for the area citizens so they could go down and see the Red Sox play. Volunteering was truly a major part of Eddie's life. For 30 years, he was the guy that you would get if you called in, if you grew up in this town, and you called in at Christmas time, your wish list, but I guess it was the fire station, it was gonna be Eddie that you talked to. And Eddie, I hope he took care of all those gifts for the kids. Okay, 30 years of that. Eddie also organized the Governor Curtis All-Star Softball Tournament in East Millinocket with all the proceeds going to the Jimmy Fund. Ed was legendary as a basketball pee-wee coach. I don't know how many people have come up to me over time, said, I had Eddie Ham as a pee-wee coach, we had a great time, we won this championship or that championship, and even if they didn't win the championship, they had a great time. One of the guys this year told me, he said, I heard Eddie Ham's going into the Hall of Fame. And he said, I think that's pretty cool. He said, I can remember back when I was in Pee-wees, I had Eddie for coach one year, and it was great. He said, the next year, we went and we looked at the sign-up list. He said, I wasn't on Eddie's team, and I cried. That's a true story. Eddie, for 40 years, did the Pee-wee coaching. And when Ron Marks up at the high school, Ronnie was the athletic director for years. And whenever Ronnie needed a JV coach or a freshman coach or a girls coach or a junior high coach, he didn't have to look very far. He would just call Eddie up, and Eddie would fill the bill. And there were no questions that needed to be asked because Eddie was great with kids and did a great job with it. He served on both the East Millinocket and the State of Maine Recreation Committees for more than 25 years and was very active in the local Elks, Masons, and Anna Shrine Temple. He was very involved in the fundraising and all their projects, very involved in everything really going on in the community. He also worked with special needs kids at Green Valley and Island Falls and mentored kids in crisis in the St. Michael's Center in Bangor. For close to 60 years, Ed has remained a loyal Schenck alumnus, supporter, and fan. In high school, he attended Boy State, played varsity basketball and baseball, was a senior class vice president, and Winter first runner-up. Since graduating, he's had many years chairing the class of '67 reunions and does a great job with it. As a supporter of his alma mater, Eddie generously treated Schenck athletic teams to a complimentary meal at the Hamlet before the quarterfinal tournament appearances during the 80s and 90s. The coaches would bring the teams down, the cheerleaders, the coaches, and Eddie and Gail would treat them to anything off the menu on his bill. He also provided college scholarships for graduating Schenck students and sponsored the Hamlet Athletic Award on class night. It was Eddie who located and donated the Wolverine that you see out in the hall. And chased it all around Canada. He tells the story of going up to Canada and actually killing it with his bare hands. I'm not sure I buy that part. It would be hard to imagine anyone who's gone to more Schenck athletic events than Eddie Ham. He even has his own spot at the Maine Principals Association basketball tournament, where fans all over the state recognize him easily standing in his green and white. And you can close your eyes and picture going into the old auditorium especially. You go through the doors getting ready to get on the bleachers, you look over to your side, standing there under that basket with his green and white on, his Schenck emblem, is Eddie Ham. And there were thousands of people that would go to those tournaments, and they all knew Eddie. They'd stop and visit. It was a regular tradition. Over the years, Eddie's thoughtfulness and generosity has shown the caliber of the man he is. In recognition of his many contributions to his school and community, the Modern Woodman of America chose him Hometown Hero. The Medway and East Millinocket Chambers of Commerce voted him Citizen of the Year. Maine Parks and Recreation Association named him Volunteer of the Year. His daughter, wherever she is, said it beautifully in her nomination. He embodies the definition of a gentleman with selfless service to the community, as well as all others who were fortunate enough to cross his path. Eddie Ham, would you please come up?
committee members, for all that you do and have done, and Ann, shout out to you too. I know I've spoken to you many times, and I know how you help Frank and the committee. Thank you. Actually, honored and humbled at the same time. It was great to see so many different individuals, former classmates that came up, people that weren't classmates, that were just good to have a conversation and talk about some old times and some things that maybe I had forgotten. But, probably a good thing. But again, the friends and family that came to this function, thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated. I would like to point out that if it wasn't for my wife Gail, you probably wouldn't be seeing me standing behind this podium. But this lectern and again, I've been very fortunate to have the friends and family that I do have. But again, I'm very humbled to be in the presence of Ensign Groves and Rear Admiral Estes. It's very humbling. And Mark and Philip, it's great to be in your company. Friends for a long time. One of the greatest guitarists out there. And Philip, super jock, soccer, basketball. And had I known Mark, I see you have a guitar up here, I got a saxophone packed away. But I didn't. But again, I want to again thank the committee, Frank. Thank you and all your time and efforts, and to all the friends, classmates, and family that made the effort to come up and spend some time with us. I appreciate it, and God bless. And if I was standing behind a different bar, I could probably throw some jokes. But that wouldn't be right. All right, thank you very much.
At this point, you gotta go back to your program because we have one other question. Your booklet. It's a Phil Wyman question. It says, whose scoring record did Phil Wyman break in 1976 when he scored 46 points against Dover Foxcroft?
Joe Gandhi.
I hear Joe Gagne, I hear Mark Rosebush. Huh. So which is it, Gagne or Rosebush?
Frank Davis.
Frank Davis. Well, that's actually well, I'll go through the history of it. Joe Gagne, where's Joey sitting? That little guy up back there was pretty special. 1968, Joey scored 42 against Dexter. Didn't play much in the fourth quarter, he probably would have scored 50. And he was one of those guys that could just light him up. Little guy. And people just couldn't believe how fast and how good a shot he was, and what a good ball handler. I had the pleasure of playing with Joe, and there are several others of our teammates from that team that are here tonight. Joe had the record for 3 years, I guess it was. And this Rosebush character came along. Where's Mark? There's Mark up there. He's sitting with Joey. Mark, the problem with Mark, his team his senior year in 1971 was so darn good, he didn't get a chance to play 4 quarters. And this is true. They went undefeated, they were state champions, and I don't believe Mark ever finished one of those games on the floor. As they were so far ahead in most of those games, they would take him out and rest him. And Ronnie Marks was the coach at the time, and Ronnie wasn't much into individual records. In his next to the last game, he played in Bucksport. And at the end of 3 quarters, Mark had, I think, 37 points. Am I right, Mark? He's old. So Ronnie says, he's only got another game or 2 left. Mark, go ahead back in and take a shot at it. So Mark went back in, and he ended up with 45 points, 45 points. And then I think Ronnie took you back out, didn't he? After you got ahead of Joe's record. And actually, the true story here is Mark was a little embarrassed about this individual record, because it was sort of meaningless. The game was won, and it was just to beat a record, and that's not what Mark Rosebush was all about. He was about winning ball games. And I know, this is a record that guys like him, if they left him in and let him, just give him the ball, you couldn't stop that kid. He had scored 100 points if you left him in and gave him the ball. Anyway, come to find out, 1976, Phil Wyman comes along, and Philip, actually, I think it was the year before against John Bass, wasn't it? That you had a 37 at halftime. Philip had 37 points as an underclassman at halftime. And again, Ronnie's coach, he says, we're not going to let this underclassman have a scoring record at Schenck. You haven't seen Philip, right? He said the whole second half. So his next year, in this game against Dover, Philip scored 46 points, which bested Marks by a point, gave him the individual scoring record. And I believe you don't have it by yourself. Stephanie Carter, I think, in the tournament, I think it was either a finals or a semifinal game, had 46 in the tournament. I don't believe it was a regular season game. So you have the boys' record and the regular season record, but she tied you other than that. Okay? Now, I don't think there was anybody afterwards. Now, the rest of the story we found out today. Philip played on a pretty good team in high school. And unfortunately, he played with a guy named Paul Jamo. Where is Paul?
Right here.
Well, you don't have to hide. The word is, if they passed the ball first to Paul, it never got to Phil. Isn't that what you told me? Philip is another one of these guys. They didn't have the 3-point shot then. This 46 points would have been many more because he shot them from long range. And the same with Joey. Okay, Mark, not so much. He was inside guy. Okay, but yeah, quite an athlete and an effort. Okay, now we can induct him. Sorry about that, Paul. They swore me to tell the truth, though, when I get up here. Phil Wyman was a middle school student in the early 70s. He started playing basketball for the Lions in the Pee Wee League, and he regularly attended Schenck High School games. At that time, legendary Mark Rosebush was the star and leading the Wolverines to unprecedented success. Philip idolized Mark and dreamed of one day being just like him. Well, He worked hard and he honed his skills, and by the mid-70s he had developed into an outstanding athlete himself. In fact, Ronnie Marks, longtime coach and AD, and also soccer coach here, said Philip was one of the top athletes he ever coached. And that's, take that from where it comes. That's a pretty remarkable remark. Philip's freshman year at Schenck, he led his JV team to an undefeated season. He was selected in that year to participate in Super Week at the University of Maine, where he had the opportunity to be instructed and evaluated by Maine's head coach, Skip Chappelle. For the next 3 years, Philip was a starter for Schenck and was named to the All-Penquist League team in each of those 3 years. He was a prolific scorer, once scoring 37 points and a half against John Babs, several times over 40 points, and in a game including a 46-point effort, against Dover, that set the individual game scoring record for Schenck. In all, he finished with 1,046 points in his career. And again, we remember that, Paul, that probably would have been at least 1,500. However, Philip was more than just a scorer. He was a complete player, and this is really true. He was a crafty ball handler, a tenacious rebounder, a top defender, and an inspirational leader. As a senior, Philip guided his team to an Eastern Maine championship and to win within 1 point of a state championship. Now I want you to all think back, 1976. Most of you were at the tournament that year. We're down by a point with time running out. Peter Lally gets the ball at half court and lets fly. The ball sails down and it goes in the basket, goes halfway down, pops back up, goes back down, comes back up, rolls around the rim twice, and falls off. True story, isn't it? Okay, well, we've done state champion.
One night game, we'd have to play Rumpus.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay, Philip, for his efforts in basketball, was selected to the All-Eastern Maine tournament team and the Class B All-State team. In soccer, Philip was an outstanding goalie. Great hands. Hold those fingers up. Show them how big those hands are. Okay, just like the rest of him, lanky. Okay, you couldn't get a ball by him. Great hands, fearless in defense of the net. His long arms and cat-like reflexes made him very hard to score on, and his powerful goal kicks consistently sailed to midfield and beyond. What I didn't know was that a lot of his success in net, again, there's Paul Jamo, helping defend. You also had Johnny Boynton, who was one of the best soccer players to ever play here at Schenck High School. And you had the enforcer, Rellan Thompson. Anybody that got near Philip, they'd say, Rellan, take care of it. Is Rellan here? He didn't make it? Okay, that's...
Probably had to fight for it.
And then we also had George Hall, who was a heck of a soccer player, a basketball player, and they tell me he's an All-American golfer now. Is that, no?
I tried.
Okay.
We also had Johnny Enfield on.
Oh, okay. Where is Donnie? Oh, that's it. Yes, another good soccer player. Okay, well, Philip, you got to remember they started soccer up here in '73. Ronnie Marks. So his junior and senior years, they'd only been playing soccer here at Schenck for 2 years, and then 3 years of senior year. In his junior and senior year, they went 23-1 in a regular season, and 1 loss in those 2 seasons. And they won the Eastern Maine, they went through the tournament, won Eastern Maine, and then they ran into Greeley. Greeley kicked their butt that first year. Greeley was a really powerful team, very, very good soccer team. So we got another chance at him his senior year. And Greeley beat us, I think 3-2. They had 53 shots on goal to Schenck's 8. And the score was 3-2. And that guy was a big reason why it stayed 3-2. He was an all-state selection in goal, both his junior and senior years. After graduating from Schenck, Philip got a full scholarship to go to Husson to play basketball. played there for a year, was the NAIA Rookie of the Year. Had a great season. But it wasn't Schenck High School basketball. Okay, they didn't fill the gym with crazy yelling fans. It just wasn't a lot of fun. And Philip really wasn't there to get an education, to get a job, because he had a job here he could make a lot of money at. So he came home, played his basketball here, and did a lot of coaching in the area for 10 years or so, and ended up raising his son, and marrying Vesta, starting their family, moving out to Cedar Lake, where he is today. One other quick story, I gave somebody a booklet that had your bio in it, and they said, you screwed up on Phil Wyman. Excuse me? What do you mean we screwed up? They said, you missed one of the most important things in his career. I said, geez, I don't know of anything else that really is better than what we talk about. He said, well, when I was a kid, the Tigers won the championship in the Pee Wee League, and he was our coach.
That was my mom.
It was.
That was my mom.
It was Judy's bar.
He was impressed with your coaching.
Philip, would you please come up and get your award?
Sorry, technical difficulties. I was talking. Can you believe that? No. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
All right, my brother told me to be short, sweet, and to the point. Just want to say, Paul Jamo, John Boynton, George, Donnie Hensby, we had a great soccer season. We didn't quite win the gold, but it was fun. Basketball, I played with a bunch of good guys. We had fun, didn't quite make it to the gold ball. And thank you guys.
Well, I guess that's it.
I found out I joined the military.
You'd be on KP if you
I'm
were.
not saluting.
Mark's our last one. Guess we got people going in and coming out. For 50 years, Mark Guitar Miller has made his living as a professional musician by playing the music that he loves. From an early age, he was surrounded by a family that nurtured his musical talents. His brother Gareth taught Mark to play the guitar when he was 6 years old. And Mark and his siblings spent many happy hours together singing and playing the guitar on the family porch. Mark also spent a lot of time practicing and learning the songs that he heard from his family and on the radio. They regularly shared their music on Sundays with their local congregation at church. Mark started out in Mattawamke. And I heard a story from somebody that was a neighbor of his when he was just a little kid. And they said, she said, I can remember going to church and Mark would be all dressed up in his best clothes. So they would pick him up and put him on a stool. And his brother Gareth, I believe it was, would be playing the guitar, and Mark would sing when he was 6, 7 years old, and never stopped. However, things changed for Mark. When he was 9 years old, his loving mother, Luella, passed away from cancer, and his dad moved from Mattawamke up to Medway to be closer to his work in the paper mill. For the shy young man, the next few years were a struggle, making new friends and finding his place in the world. He found solace in his music, and it was his music that opened many doors for him. He formed his first band, the Stingrays, when he was 11 years old. And in high school, Mark joined the Variations, a local band that played the top 40s at area dances. Rose Jamo was the mother of the band's drummer, and she sort of took Mark under her wing, becoming basically a second mother to him at that time. She took him aside one day and she said, "Mark, whatever you do, young man, in life, you work, 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 and get good at it." Mark took that advice and he worked very hard at his craft, and always has, and he got very good at it. During the 70s and 80s, Mark played locally and throughout Maine and became well known for his talent and his style. He then branched out, took his musical skills across the country, where he opened for many big name musicians, including B.B. King, Taj Mahal, Waylon Jennings, Peter Wolf, and a lot of others. I didn't have room to name them all. He performed with the band Boston and the lead singer Brad Delp. Brad became one of his good friends. They played at the Boston Music Awards, and they worked on an album together for 3 years. Brad says the best blues band in the land. That guy right there, Mark Miller. And Brad then reciprocated by doing the vocals on Mark's CD, What You Gonna Do. In an interview with Mike Dow for the Main Edge, Mark spoke about the musicians that he admired and those who had influenced his music. He said Roy Buchanan was his favorite guitarist of all time and was a great influence on his life. Mark said Roy's father was a preacher, and Mark's grandfather was a preacher as well. That gospel influence came out in his playing, and it comes out in mine. Mark's work didn't go unnoticed. In 1989, he was the winner of the Lenny Breau Memorial Award. Music Mate ranked Mark as Maine's favorite guitar player. He was featured twice in the Face magazine, as well as in several articles about his music in Maine's major newspapers. Mark played at Governor John Baldacci's inaugurations and was appointed to the Maine Arts Commission by the governor. In 2022, Maine Music Awards selected Mark for their Music Hall of Fame. Despite all the accolades, he remains a very humble man. He thoroughly loves giving back to his community and sharing his special gift of music with others. As Mark says, it's music from the heart. And that's what I always try to do, play from the heart. Mark is a dear friend, and I guess I'm too straightforward, but he's
great.
This I think, I've done these for a number of years now, and I don't remember anybody, Mark, that I think appreciated this more than you do, and we're very appreciative of you. Mark has agreed today, if you haven't ever heard this guy play the guitar, he's going to play a couple songs for us and sing a little song. And Mark, if you'll come up and get ready to get your plaque, I'm going to move this out of the way, put your guitar on so you look comfortable.
Frank?
I saw Eddie Ham going with something. Yes, no.
Okay.
Mark, we're going to check this mic and just make sure it's not on too. Okay, I think we're all set.
1, 2.
Check, testing.
He's going to take his chair over.
I get to sit in your chair.
You can have.
You can boss him
I've been
around.
hired here all my life. you so much. I'm really honored. I'm not used to this type of thing.
Well deserved.
Thank you so much. My sister's here today. Could you stand up? Thank you. My sister Dina. This is the biggest honor of my life, and there will never be anything ever happen in the future that could ever keep up with it. I'm so honored, and thank you so much. But what I want to do is, I think my greatest accomplishments, I'm going to brag a little bit. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. But I'm going to brag about my accomplishments a little bit. And here they are. Bobby Perry, Wayne Brewer, Tom Jamo, Rose, Ned, the whole family, Pat Moscom, Philip Rose, Johnny Mitchell, John Bird, Roger and Mike Collinsworth, Jeff Hammond family, Galen Brown and family, Terry Brackett, Billy Birmingham, Jeff Crocker, Carla Thibodeau, Harry King, Vinnie Contreras, Brad Delp, Judith Pauli, Karen Rush, Ivan Clark, Mike Perry, Donnie Page, Blaine Page, Gerald Brewer, Mike Hallett, Pastor Reggie Adams, Don and Faye Pudney, Mark Wellman, Jeff Glidden. That's just a few, because I don't want to take up the afternoon. Okay? That's my accomplishments. you know, I did forget the name, Mark Rosebush. Thank you for your friendship. Appreciate it very much. I've had a couple of mentors, well, a lot of mentors actually, but as you see, gives me a chance to honor all of you folks and your committee. Frank, you're one of the greatest ball players I ever watched. Joe Garner, I love. Thank you so much for all that entertainment. You know, it's fun. But I've had my mentors. Gerald Brewer was a big mentor of mine. He played so soft. You know, if you hit it hard, it sounds like that. Doesn't sound very good. But he showed me how to. Let alone such a beautiful soft guitar player, right here in East Millinocket. So he was a big mentor for me. The next guy was a guy I watched here in this auditorium, really. I was telling Justin today, standing probably right about in here, watching this guitar player named Jude Ippoliti. And he was just so precise all the time. He never fluctuated. And I've never really been like that, and I'm still not, because my imagination takes over sometimes. But he was such a precise guitar player. I wanted to be like him, and he ended up becoming my friend through my whole life, and still is. As a matter of fact, he wrote this next song that I'm going to do for you, and he's so brilliant, and he's been so good for me. Like when I got back from Colorado 3 years ago. I was just getting going in Denver, Colorado. I wanted to play the blues in Denver. And so I was disappointed. I got home. COVID, all of us were frightened and scared. We didn't know what was going on. And I called Jude Ippoliti and he says, I have something for you. You know, it doesn't surprise me any. It's like Pastor Adams here too, my beautiful friend. So he said, yeah, remember that recording that we did, a few years back? I said, no, I don't remember, singing anything like that. And he said, well, come on over and pick it up, And I got it, and it's a video on YouTube. It's called Stars Over Katahdin, and I did a video for it, and he had me sing it, and it really, really made me feel so good to be home. It was just wonderful. So that's that. I'll do that. And then it's just so many people that I love, Stars over Qatar, lights are on the shore, loons are crying on the heaven's open, stars over Qatar, ripples are on the shore, moonlight on the water. Who could ask for more? Stars over it feels so right. Starry night. That's Jude Ippoliti for you right there. Right. Stars over lights are on the shore, loons cry on the water. It's heaven's open door. Stars over Qatar. It feels so right. Starry night. I want to talk about Pastor Adams a little bit. He's here right now. You're incredible. You are. You're incredible. You know? You coached baseball with my brother. I don't know if you guys had quite a team that year. And did my brother get in any fist fights? No? So you kept him under control. Okay. Yeah. All right, that's good.
Tough job, but somebody had to do it.
That's right, yeah, I know, yeah. But you're amazing. Thank you for being in my life. You knew my mother, father. You probably knew me when I was a little kid, huh? When I was raising heck down there in Manhattan. We didn't do too much, but feelings, that's what it's all about, isn't it? You know, I mean, I don't like to get too mushy. Sometimes we've got to be tough, right? But to me, toughness is like, I had a brother, Reggie. He was a great man. My brother was a great man, but you know, he liked to fight and stuff, and he was a boxer. But to me, strength and power is in gentleness. That's what it is for me. I try to be like that. I do get angry sometimes because the world drives me a little crazy. But I like to try to be gentle. And this is the best way I can do it with this. People get frustrating, right? But anyway, so this next tune I wrote with a gentleman down in Augusta. I couldn't have written it without him. And pay an honor to him too. At the time when I met this gentleman, he had probably 12 years ago, I think. So he had gone through a divorce and you know, wife with 2 children, and he was fine with that. And he left her everything, and they were good friends and everything. So he was kind of depressed, and he told me that he was a harmonica player, which I thought he was lying immediately, you know, because I hear a lot of that stuff. And I'm a poet. He says I'm a writer. I'm a poet. You know, and again, I thought he was lying to me, you know. So I had him come down to the house the next day. I knew they were certain. And so I always had this little, I was messing around with this chord. I like this chord. I was just messing around with that, kind of relaxing a little bit, you know. And I went, give me an old small town. Okay, so he was standing there, and I didn't really care too much about some of his other poetry that he'd written. It wasn't for songs, it was good. So he said, well, let's write a song about Maine. I said, okay, we'll try it, you know. But this guy liked to smoke pot all the time. Now, I smoke once in a while, maybe at nighttime or something, a little bit, you know, before bed or whatever, relaxed. But I don't do it the rest of the time. He liked to smoke all the time, but he was very intelligent, and so he came, you know, took us 2 days to do this. And he thought that he got mad at me, he swore at me, he was terrible, you know, because I'm very fussy about what I like. And so I produced it, we put it together, some of the lyrics were corny, but when he said, Little League and basketball and children skating on a frozen pond. Yeah, so we kept pushing them together, and it came out to be this nice song that we've shared. We've given it away. We didn't want any money for it. Money ruins a lot of music, actually. Michael Hale is using it on reefs across America, which is a total honor to be a part of that. Thank you, Michael Hale. Thank you so much. And we gave it away, you know. I said, you can have it, but give me a 6-pack of beer or something later. But it goes like this. I'll try to do my best on it. Winding roads and granite stones, waves crashing on the shore. Pine trees and chickadees and waterfalls and country stores. Apple trees and fallen leaves, a sunrise over the sea. Black-eyed Susans, lupins painting the field for you and me. Back in Maine, back in Maine. Give me an old small town right here in Maine. Little league and basketball and children skating on a frozen pond. Lightning bugs and Grammy's hugs. Summer days go on and on. Lumberjacks and fishers are working in the mill. Potluck dinners at the Grange, and Daddy's out cooking on the grill. Back in Maine, back in Maine. Just give me an old small town right here in Maine. Ferris wheels, potato fields, a farmer out baling hay. Reading by the fireplace on a cold winter's day. Boreal Theater. Randy Jackson started the theater in Millinocket. They have all kinds of things for different age groups. It's a very healthy environment. We'll be up there tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I always have special guests, so I don't ever tell anyone who they are gonna be, but it's a little surprise. So we'll be there at 2 o'clock. Again, I hope I didn't take up too much time, but look,